Good afternoon and welcome to Capital Markets Cocktails with Lambert Company. I'm your host for today, Tyler Deur, a senior manager here at Lambert, and I'm joined by Capital Markets veteran Jeff Tryka, a senior director on our team. With that, I'll turn it over to Jeff to further introduce the launch of the series.
Thanks, Tyler. By way of background, as we've been working through remotely during the pandemic and started thinking about ways to creatively interact and talk about current events in the markets and emerging trends that impact investments and investor relations. We've hosted a bunch of webinars. We've had virtual events, and we most recently I've hosted a couple of virtual wine tastings with some of our colleagues. And we started thinking about similar virtual events that our team could host, and Capital Markets Cocktails was born. So every couple of weeks, we plan on a short discussion of a timely topic surrounding a cocktail chosen by one of us or by our guest. And we plan to post the recipe for the cocktail and provide opportunities for interactive audience participation as well. So questions and comments that we'll respond to as we do this. And so with that background, we can start our pilot episode, and we're planning on discussing a recent blog post that I wrote about kind of what the post-COVID world would look like for the investment world, particularly the leisure and hospitality sectors. And we're doing that with martinis, and in my case, a dirty martini. And if you think about it, a martini is kind of an ideal cocktail for thinking about hospitality and leisure. And in the years when I was frequently traveling and doing investor relations, and I found that it was somewhat relaxing to come back to the hotel at the end of the day and get to the bar and enjoy a cocktail. And my choice was always a dirty martini with 3 blue cheese olives. And so that's what we're going with today. And certainly, there's a number of different ways you could do martinis. Martinis are also nice because there's a lot of different varieties. And just kind of like, it's versatile, creative, it's customizable. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, there's so many different martini varieties now. I mean, there's chocolate martinis. There's, when I'm in the summertime, I like doing limoncello martinis and with tropical fruit. And so it's kind of fun, and you can do different varieties, and it's a nice, refreshing cocktail. Now, the dirty martini obviously has olive juice in it, so it gets a little bit more brines from the olive juice, and so it's a little salty, and not unlike your host here. So,
wait, are we calling me the host or you the host?
Well,
I think if you ask the audience, that description better fits you.
Well, that's probably true. And so today we're going to do a dirty martini, and so
Well, Jeff, it sounds like so. I mean, similar to our topic today, the different variations of martinis kind of blend to their environment, or kind of like a lot of these business we'll be discussing, you discuss in your blog, are going to have to blend to this new reality. So I think before kind of you walk the steps of the cocktail, I'm just curious to how you arrived at this version of a martini as your preferred choice.
It's interesting. I think the first time I tried one, and it was probably, I don't know how long ago it was, but we were out for dinner, and we were going out to a steakhouse for dinner after a bunch of investor meetings, and the CEO and I at the company at the time, he basically said, "You want a martini?" I said, "Sure." And so, twist my arm.
That's the compelling tale that I was looking for.
That's the compelling tale. So I ended up choosing a dirty martini with 3 blue cheese olives. And you're at a steakhouse, of course they've got blue cheese olives. Not everybody does. I actually do my own blue cheese olives when I'm making them at home. So I stuff the blue cheese myself into the olives. I get some Mario olive stuffers that are pre-pitted, so you can just stuff them with whatever you'd like. And so I did my own blue cheese olives today for this event. But yeah, it's not that exciting of a story, I guess. We were out for steaks, and someone asked, and I said, yeah.
Fair enough. So you want to walk us through this? I know you've taught me a little, so I've got, my glass, my actual martini glass here,
So
chilling.
there's your martini glass. So you start with.
And I do. So Jeff was so kind as to, I didn't have a cocktail shaker, and have consistently complained about that. And he definitely has a preference for shaken, not stirred, much akin to James Bond. I know Jeff and him have been compared on numerous occasions. So I'm unfamiliar with how to work this. You might have to walk me through it.
Well, and I'm kind of a secret agent, but it is my preference for shaken and not stirred. And so I guess the first thing you do is start off, put some ice in your glass to get your glass chilled, and you've already got that going on. So then I prefer vodka martinis. You can do a gin martini if you want. My preference is vodka. I'm not a big fan of gin. So today I'm actually using Till vodka, which is actually produced by one of our clients, MGP Ingredients. They produce that out of Atchison, Kansas. It's actually a really high quality vodka, and I've enjoyed a couple of martinis already out of that bottle, and it's very smooth and delightful. So
So I actually, Jeff, I actually had the benefit of doing an analyst day at their Lawrenceburg facility. And this was just when they were releasing that. So they did a taste test with all the analysts and investors in attendance, a blind taste test between Till and Grey Goose. And unanimously, Till was the preferred and smoother option. So you're definitely correct in saying that's a great choice.
So yeah, a blind pig finds an acorn once in a while.
Yeah, that's definitely the same.
So pour your ice in your shaker, pour some vodka. I've done this enough so that I could actually pour just enough vodka to make one martini into the glass. Then I'd use a splash of dry vermouth, and then a splash.
Does it matter the order?
No, you're going to shake it.
Okay. No, that's obvious. I should know that.
Unless I got you the deluxe shaker, I don't know. And so then you add as much olive juice as you'd like. I'm obviously the salty one, so I like a little bit heavier on the olive juice. And then once you put it all in the shaker, now do you have a lid for that shaker? There should be a lid for it. Yeah. You got to put the lid on before you shake it. That's important to note.
I may not have done that.
If you don't, then you might make a mess. I'm just saying. So
I think I've got everything.
I'm gonna go ahead and shake mine. We don't need to go overboard. And so I've got my three blue cheese olives. And then just pour it into your chilled glass. And there you have it. You're ready to go.
Is this a strainer? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't see what I actually ordered for you, but mine actually has a little lid on it that's got its own strainer, so it pops the lid.
This seemed to work all right.
But if you don't have a lid like that with a strainer, then you just need to strain it through that strainer device, and you'll get it into there. So the reason I like shaking it is because when you shake it, the ice starts to break down a little bit, and so you get some really nice chilled ice crystals right on the top of your martini, and I just really enjoy that. So
sure. And we're going to be posting the recipe likely in advance of this, right? Or as we announce it, so the audience can hopefully participate.
We should have the recipe available, as we do this, so you'll be able to download the recipe and get that detail as well. And that's going forward as well. We have the recipes posted with all the materials, the content for this. So with that, here.
Cheers, Jeff.
Cheers.
So let's dive in a little bit into your blog post. So it's a blog post kind of detailing what to expect in a post-COVID world, specifically for leisure and hospitality. Now, at Lambert, we often work with small and mid-cap size companies. We're pretty industry agnostic, but we do have a focus in those two areas. So why were those the choice beyond our expertise?
Well, I think a couple of things. First, I mean, obviously, we have a pretty strong history and background in leisure and hospitality in our firm. I've worked in the RV industry for over 15 years now. Was an analyst covering the RV industry before that, so we've got the leisure aspect covered. But then I know we've also worked with a lot of food service companies. We've worked with a lot of other leisure and hospitality focused companies over time. Some on the PR side, not all on the IR side, but it's been a pretty good balance as we've gone through. So that was really the focus. And quite frankly, for this blog post, it not only was our experience within the leisure and hospitality industry, but also the fact that that is one that's been most disrupted by COVID. And whether it's airlines or hotels or restaurants, they've seen their businesses truly decimated by the stay-at-home orders and all of the restrictions that have been in place, not only in the immediate aftermath of the pandemic, but then again, during reopening, where restaurants that used to maybe have 100 tables or 50 tables and be able to seat that many guests in a seating, and now all of a sudden they come out and they can only use 25% of their tables due to social distancing and regulations. So how do you deal with that? Hotels, you've seen hotel chains that were changing some of their cleaning practices to be more efficient and reduce costs, and now they're back to being much more stringent on cleaning. There's airlines. I saw that there was an article a few weeks ago from the CEO of Ryanair, which is a big Irish airline, about how do we deal with airline travel when we come out of this? How do you get minimum social distancing when planes have been designed for decades to fit as many people as possible in them? And if you suddenly say, okay, we need to have empty rows between people or empty seats between people, then how do you, as an airline, how do you pay for that? How do you, do ticket prices have to go extraordinarily high? And so there's a lot of considerations as you think about this and the impacts of this. How are you going to how are you going to survive? And there's been some creative solutions that have come out. I think in the restaurant business particularly, we've seen a significant move towards takeout and delivery options, and people still wanting to eat out their favorite foods at their favorite restaurants, but just not being able to sit down there. And so they use Grubhub or Uber Eats, or some offer their own delivery services. Some are even getting more creative, and I think you'll see this in the future as companies really start thinking about how to creatively solve these issues. One of the restaurants in my town in lowly little Elkhart is a root beer stand. And it's an old-fashioned 50s style drive-in where people pull in and pull their car up, and someone comes out to take their order and brings them their food. And that restaurant has been jam-packed for the entire length of this COVID shutdown. And so maybe you'll see more outdoor dining options from different restaurants, more drive-in options and things like that. You might see that in movie theaters as well, where movie theaters have been kind of stuck with how do we reopen. Maybe there's a drive-in option. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, Jeff, I know you've touched on kind of a lot of the practical and those who are dealing with this firsthand, how they might be adapting and adjusting. But obviously, we provide consulting in relation to communications with the investment audience and the analyst audience. So, as a former analyst yourself, I'm kind of curious as to what counsel we can provide there that might even apply outside of these industries. I'm thinking, for those that don't have a natural update, such as we work with a lot of community banks, so we've helped organize communications both internally and externally around what those operations are going to look like, what the protocols are, and that the priority, of course, is the employee safety and health. But then too, I guess I'm wondering, for those that don't have a direct application such as that, or a plant opening for many of our kind of auto and mobility clients, what's the right cadence of communication? How do you kind of address these macro issues? Is it just bolstering your quarterly communications, or I guess just how are you thinking about what these communications should look like?
Well, I think there's a bunch of different considerations here, and you asked about 17 questions in that comment. So I'll try and answer the ones that I remember. But the first things I would say is, if you think about it, there was actually a humorous video that came out of shortly after the pandemic started that showed all of these companies coming out with commercials that basically all use the same phraseology, the same we're all in this together, we're here for you, and all these other sorts of messages, which are all good messages. But when everyone else is saying the same messages, it loses its effectiveness. And so I think you need to make sure that you're answering the appropriate questions for investors, answering their concerns. Their concerns right now, and in the immediate impact of COVID, was, do you have the liquidity to survive? And what is the impact on your supply chain? What is the impact on your business, your customers, your employees? All of those things were of immediate concern. I think coming out of the pandemic, the concerns are going to shift, and they're going to see, okay, you've survived the liquidity crunch of not having revenues for 2 months. What's next? How does this impact your business for the long term? Is there a long-term impact? In some businesses, that may not be the case. In some businesses, it may be negative. It may, restaurants and leisure, a lot of restaurants, hotels, airlines, they're going to be struggling for a little while. And that other businesses may actually benefit. And so answering those questions and being proactive on that, I think, is important. But the other factor is, I think as an investor relations professional, you need to rethink what you're doing. And in some ways, I think it's going to be really positive. And, we've been working remotely for almost 2 months now. And it's been incredible the amount of flexibility we have and the amount of productivity we've had, despite the fact that we're all working from home and you're in your kitchen, I'm in my dining room, and we're still getting work done, and we're still being effective. We're still providing the service that our clients need. In the same way, for an investor relations professional, this actually opens up a huge benefit. And if you think about, doing non-deal roadshows, when I was at Deur Industries doing investor relations, I was traveling to 32 cities a year, which is an aggressive travel schedule. And now
many martinis, sounds like.
That's probably true. But now you can do that remotely. And a lot of investors are now much more open to doing video meetings and meeting with your CEO via video versus coming to our office and meeting face to face. We can just do a video conference just like you and I are doing right now. And that presents a lot of opportunities to increase your effectiveness at a much more efficient pace and a much more cost-effective way, because you're not paying for airline tickets and hotels and car service and all the rest and dinners and everything else that you would normally pay. So you're going to be able to cut those costs out immediately. And so think about things like that. Think about your annual meeting. We've had a number of clients that have shifted from a regular annual meeting to a virtual annual meeting. Well, I started thinking about that, and I wrote a blog post about this a month or so ago. What are the opportunities for you if you're going to do a virtual annual meeting where you used to spend a lot of money on a ballroom at a hotel and, presentations, and, there's a lot of expense for 3 or 4 shareholders that might show up for the meeting. Now you could actually do it virtually, and some companies have been leading on this. Ford Motor Company has been doing this for a number of years now. And you're able to actually do the meeting, but you can highlight products, you can highlight production facilities, you can highlight new innovations that you're pursuing, and actually show the people on the screen, this is what we're doing. And it becomes a much more effective investor relations venue to actually tell your company's story. So taking advantage of those opportunities, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and I guess just kind of as we close here, I wanted to take everything full circle. I know our team, I think, here at Lambert, just to provide another example, has done, as you mentioned a really good job of adapting to this new normal, I guess you could call it. I know we don't have the advantage of you coming to the office every once in a while now, Jeff, and enjoying your martini of the night at the hotel that you typically stay at. I know that's another tradition of yours. But I think you're exactly right. We've adapted to Microsoft Teams and holding meetings and talking to each other consistently about what we can be doing proactively for clients and identifying opportunities rather than just sitting back and waiting. I think exactly you're right with the annual meeting. We did a number of virtual annual meetings for clients and have the advantage of doing it across a wide spectrum. So bolstering our knowledge there. And I think we've...
Remember too, I mean, there's going to be a lot of change that comes out of this, and there's going to be some winners too. And I think that's something to think about as well. And I think we're winning in terms of how we're adapting. And I think there's going to be other changes. In leisure and hospitality, you're going to have significant changes in the way people vacation and the way people socialize and the way people do things. And I think it's important for us all to keep an open mind on those things. I think, one of the industries that I know, my belief is that they're going to really benefit from this is the RV space. Now, I obviously worked in the RV industry, and I think they're going to benefit from this because, consumers are going to look and they're going to say, well, do I really want to get on a plane and I'm not sure who I'm sitting next to, and maybe they're sick, maybe they're not. And so there's doubts that come in. And I think when, right now the RV industry is benefiting because people are looking and saying, well, I can buy an RV and it may not cost that much. And I can, I could have my own sheets, my own towels, my own clean dishes. I know who's used it before, so I feel a little more secure. And so in the same way, I think a lot of industries and a lot of professions, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look and be creative to think, how do we solve these problems in creative ways where ultimately when we come out of the pandemic and get to the post-COVID-19 world, we're a lot better off than we were.
Yeah, and I guess just in close, one quick question on that point to provide another takeaway for our audience. How do you suppose a company like an RV company that is seeing some great positives potentially coming out of this, which is largely a negative for a lot of people, how do you communicate that effectively without seeming opportunistic? And I think the value we've provided clients is, building a cadence of that creativity, that adaptation, that credibility to, shifting to match, different scenarios, whether positive or negative, and that, the company and the CEO and the executive team are prepared for that. But how do you kind of balance what many people are seeing as a negative and being negatively affected by as a positive without seeming opportunistic?
Well, I think part of it is continuing. You have to be consistent in your messaging. You have to be transparent in your messaging. And by all means, you have to focus on the positive aspects of your message, because, if your business is like an RV company is having a good turn of events, because this is actually going to, long-term provide people with more reason to buy your product, that's great. But you don't want to rub it in anyone's face that you're having a good turn of events, but you focus on the positives. As an RV company, this may be a tragic turn of events, but it fits right in with the positive messages and the positive aspects that we've provided for consumers for generations. Every consumer wants to spend time with their family, enjoying the great outdoors. They want to be able to kind of see America and do it in a way that's flexible and affordable and really brings them closer together. And RVs have been doing that for decades. And that's what it's really all about. Yeah, maybe as a side benefit to COVID that people are thinking about it more, but ultimately the core values there are consistent, and that's what you need to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's a super salient takeaway, Jeff. Well, I don't think we yet have a signature sign off as much as we might have signature cocktails, but Jeff, let me hand it over to you to maybe attempt to try and make one here as we sign off from our first episode.
Well, I think it's always interesting just to, in Wall Street's well known for having cocktails after work. And I think a lot of people, it's great to socialize. It's great to, get together, even if it's virtual, and have some enjoyable times. And so for us, I think, we want to be able to continue getting together, virtually or not, enjoying ourselves, enjoying great ideas and sharing great ideas amongst our team and amongst our clients. And for that, we raise our glass and say cheers.
Cheers. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll catch you next time.